Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this evening's broadcast. And for those of you who participated in last week's webinar, welcome back. And for those of you who are joining us just for the first time tonight, thanks for coming on board. I'm your host, Eric Goldman, the editor of Holistic Primary Care. And this is the second in our series of 3 webinars on the very important topic of immune system support for the fall and winter months. I don't know about where you are, but we're still experiencing very warm, summery weather here in the Northeast. So it doesn't feel like fall's around the corner, but the truth is it is, and we're going to be into those cold weather months very, very soon. Tonight, we're going to be focusing on young people, on children and adolescents. School's definitely in full swing, and so are all the germ exposures that go along with that. And so the questions we'll be addressing are like, what can we do now to support and bolster children's immune systems, and our own, of course, so that we can all better meet the challenges that come along with the cold, dark seasons. Our speaker tonight is Jaclyn Chasse. She is the Vice President of Medical Education at Emerson Ecologics, and she also heads Emerson's Elevate program. Many of you may know her from the naturopathic field. She's a prominent speaker. She's been on the circuit for many years. As I'm sure you all know, Emerson is the largest wholesale distributor of natural products in the U.S., specifically for medical practitioners. And here at HPC, we've had a long relationship with Emerson, and we're very grateful for their sponsorship of this series. So Dr. Chasse is one of the leading voices for natural medicine in this country. She's a graduate of Bastyr University and has been practicing as a licensed naturopath for many years. Her focus is specifically on family health care, particularly women's and children's issue, fertility, and sexual health. And at Emerson, she was the VP of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs before she stepped into her current role as the head of medical education and the Elevate online dispensary. In addition to her practice and her work with Emerson, she also served as the president of both the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians and the New Hampshire Association of Naturopathic Doctors. And she served on several boards, including the American Herbal Products Association. She's also a mom with a buzzing household full of kids and pets. And so tonight's topic, pediatric immune support, is something she knows very, very well, both from a personal and a professional perspective. So before I turn things over to Jaclyn Chasse, just a few logistical points. The slide set for tonight's presentation is available as a PDF. So to download that, just open it on your control panel. There's a little gray bar that says handouts. Just click on that, and then you'll see inside there's a little file that says pediatric immune support. If you click on that, it will download the PDF right to your computer. And we will be taking questions after the formal presentation. So if you'd like to ask a question, just click on the little tab there that says questions, and that will open up a dialog box, and just type in your question, and we'll try and answer as many as we can before the allotted time runs out. So with that, let me turn things over to Dr. Jaclyn Chasse, and we'll get into the matters of pediatric immune support. So here we go.
Wonderful. Thank you for such a nice intro, Eric. And funny enough, when you mention a bustling household, yeah, I have 4 children at home here. And right now, my elementary schooler, my 2nd grader, is dealing with the sniffles. And my 2-year-old has a gastrointestinal virus. So, it's when we talk about pediatric immune support essentials, I was talking with a colleague today, and she's like, well, that's well timed because you are in it right now. And yes, we are in it.
So this is a personal case study session, huh?
Yeah, we can definitely go through some personal cases. So you already provided kind of an introduction to me. So tonight, what I'm going to be doing is first telling you a little bit about some of the resources at Emerson Ecologics, like our Ask the Expert team and our medical education team, how we serve you, and what else we can do if you ever have questions that come up that aren't covered in this webinar tonight. Well, then we're going to dive into some of the things we hear about, the questions we receive from customers about immune support for children. And I'm going to talk about newborn up through school age primarily. And we see that consistently, that that full range of ages and concerns around prevention and management of immune concerns. We will talk about true preventive strategies to help kids stay healthy, particularly in schools and daycare when they can be exposed to quite a lot. And then I'm going to share with you my top 5 immune support products for children, and a little bit more about some of the nuances and intricacies of working with children, and how sometimes you have to be a little bit creative to get medicines into them. So I'll share some of the tips and tricks that I've used in practice successfully with a lot of children. And then we're going to share just some final immune support tips for kids and for their parents around this time of year, and we'll open up into Q&A. So first, I want to share a little bit about our Ask the Expert program at Emerson Ecologics. So this is clinical support provided by Emerson's in-house healthcare practitioners. So you heard a little bit about me. We also have Lisa Murray. She's a registered dietitian and also a lay herbalist. So she was trained by a lot of the traditional lay herbalists, Rosemary Gladstar and many others. And she's been practicing herbalism for probably over 30 years. Meredith Murray is another naturopathic physician. She's brilliant. Her clinical specialty is gastrointestinal health, and but they both have a really solid foundation in clinical medicine across the board, and really very specifically in our supplements that we carry. So with Ask the Expert, just a couple of things about it. We have a practitioner product expert devoted to answering clinical questions all day long. So you can email questions. Every product page has a link to submit a question if you have a question about a product. You can also call and set up a phone consultation if you'd like. In those, we talk about clinical cases. So we even have people that share labs that want a second opinion, or we talk through some different options for dietary supplements that might be supportive for that patient. We talk a lot. We answer about 150 email questions, and we do about 20 to 30 phone consultations per week. So that's a lot. It's about 7,000 emails each year. The most common question we get is asking product recommendations for certain conditions, or people that are looking for like specific ingredients in one formula, or they're trying to manage a patient with very difficult allergies, for example. We can really help them because we navigate the product selection. We have over 20,000 products. So we can narrow down to exactly what people need. Some interesting, like recently we had some calls around respiratory support for patients in Hawaii during a volcanic eruption. So we get some really interesting questions too that are really just fun to field. And the doctors will, especially when you call in, they'll get a little advance notice of what you're calling about when you schedule the visit, and it allows the doc to pull up research studies for you and really provide a really great service. So we're going to talk tonight about the most common immune support questions for kids. The first, is there anything that can be done to strengthen the immune system and prevent kids from catching everything? And I think that's pretty much how it's usually worded, prevent kids from catching everything. We're going to then talk about safety and what immune support products are safe for children to use. We'll talk briefly about pregnant and lactating women. I know that Lisa touched upon that in the last presentation, but it's also really important to consider because if you're going to treat a child of a lactating mom, then you can also treat her. So understanding what's safe is really helpful. Lastly, we're going to talk about how you dose products differently for children. And then what if the child can't swallow pills? What are other ways you can get a good, potent, strong immune support in? So let's start with, are there any things that can be done to strengthen the immune system to prevent kids from catching everything? The first and foremost, I'm sorry, my dog just walked in. You can hear him sniffing. He's a snorting bulldog. Behaviors, so washing hands, making sure you get adequate sleep, exercise and play, making sure kids get time outdoors, they're getting fresh air and they're not constantly breathing in trapped air. And then also, we've really seen a big difference in our family by putting air filters in our main living areas. So we have one in our main living room that we spend a lot of time in, and then we have them in the bedrooms. And that really helps a lot to take particles out of the air, including viral particles if you buy the right kind of filters. So that's a really nice way to make sure that the space that you are sleeping in, or you spend actually quite a lot of time in, is clean. The second is ensuring adequate base nutrition. So some of the important nutrients that I like to check on for children are vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc. So I do usually have children on some kind of supplemental vitamin D. It might be just part of a multivitamin, but I like to make sure they're getting adequate. It's very important for immune function. And then vitamin C and zinc, they may be getting through food, or we might be supplementing through something like a multi. And I'll share a couple favorites with you. The third, and this is I do for every family, is probiotics. Like if you have children or you're seeing children and they're in a school system, whether it's private or public, daycare or high school, every child should be taking a probiotic daily. It's so important and so effective for immune support. I'm going to share some really cool data with you a little bit later on tonight, where the probiotics have been shown to be preventive for catching kind of that common cold and even the flu. And then some herbs can be safe to use also. We'll talk about those. So it is important to know that not all products that are safe for adults are safe for children. Many of them have elements of them that can be toxic, and particularly when you're dealing with immature detoxification systems like young children's kidneys and liver. You want to make sure you're not giving them anything that could tax those organs or do anything to immature organs, where they can't be eliminated properly or they might cause damage. So some of the things that I trust that I have in this kind of pediatric immune kit I keep around are a multivitamin for nutritional support. I love mushroom formulas, and now there's actually a lot of really nice mushroom formulas that are formats that are even easier to give to children. So I didn't include it in the presentation, but one of my favorite mushroom formulas was a capsule formula, just a powdered mushroom blend. And we used to empty the capsules, which is just the desiccated mushroom powder, into soup. And I would, make a soup like at least once a week, but we would use, as we called it, immune soup, and the kids would eat it. And the mushroom actually added a nice earthy umami flavor to the soup. But there's a lot of nice packets available, things that are blended into drinks. So you can get mushrooms a lot of really easy ways now. Arabinogalactan is another really nice option. This is immune supportive sugar essentially, but it works really nicely to support the immune system. It's another nice, easy, safe choice. And then on the herbal side, garlic and echinacea, elderberry, and andrographis are four of my favorites. So garlic, I'm sure you're familiar with. Eating garlic is great. Also, if you can get kids to do any kind of raw garlic, that's even better. So you'll see Manuka honey on the bottom of the list. And oftentimes, if I have a sick child, I will pulverize garlic, mix it into Manuka honey, and dose that to them on the spoon. Echinacea we'll cover a little bit more in depth. It's one of the most well-researched botanicals for immune support, along with elderberry. I mentioned probiotics. Andrographis we'll talk a bit more about. Andrographis is a great herb that's very potent, but also very safe. And then you've seen the Manuka honey here. So elderberry, now elderberry is probably the easiest medicine to give to children, and it has a very long established history of being a tonic for immune support. It's really high in flavonoids, including anthocyanidins, so it has some antioxidant properties, and it can be taken over the long term or short term. There is also some really interesting studies showing elderberry can provide a rapid immune support and really shorten the duration of illness. One of the studies I saw was around the flu, and it had shortened the duration of illness for 4 days, which is very significant. So, and they have compared that to some of the conventional things like Tamiflu, and found that, elderberry really has like no side effects, and it has a really nice immune supportive benefit. So elderberry is one of my very, very favorites to think about. I'll share some of my favorite specific products with you shortly. So Andrographis is another one. You might not be as familiar with Andrographis. It's traditionally used in Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, and it has been studied also primarily to be used like at the time of immune upset, so right at the onset, in order to support healthy immune cells and support their response. It's a very bitter herb, so it's tough to get kids to take it. They would really need to do it in a capsule form. So that limits the use to older children, but it's amazing for respiratory health, and it also supports lymph flow. This is one of the ones that I take whenever I need additional immune support. I find it to be very potent and very effective. So if you have an older child, like really kids over the age of about 2.5 or 3 can swallow capsules if you work with them and train them to do it. But with a capsule, if you could get a small capsule, one kind of trick we would use in the clinic is we would coat the capsule in oil, like an olive oil, have the child put it in their mouth, and then drink something fizzy like seltzer water through a straw. And for most kids, it will go right down without any problem. Echinacea is probably the most popular herb for immune support in America. It's very, very safe for children, even the youngest of children. There's 2 plants that we use with Echinacea, Echinacea angustifolia and Echinacea purpurea. So it's important to know when you're looking for immune support products, you're really looking for something with Echinacea angustifolia root. So if you are looking at products, and I see this all the time in drugstores with kind of lower price point brands, they will contain aerial parts, which is the flower, the stem, and the leaves, but they do not contain root. Or they'll contain some kind of proprietary blend that mentions the root, but you don't really know how much is in there. And really the root is the most concentrated place to get the medicine that's needed in order to support the immune system. So you really want to look for something with Echinacea angustifolia root. Echinacea, on top of immune support, it also supports the mucous membranes and the skin. So it's also great because that is where our first line of defense lives, is in our mucous membranes of the mouth and the nose and the airways. So Echinacea provides great support for those tissues as well. Now, some of the most interesting immune research for children is around probiotics. So you might know of probiotics for digestive health, but hopefully you're also aware of their positive role on immune health. Daily probiotics have been studied and shown to be effective at supporting the immune system to provide adequate resistance against the common cold and flu-like respiratory illness. This is very effective. So I've even seen studies where they look at an elementary school, separate the children, and one of the studies that I had seen, the students taking the probiotics had a 40% reduction in catching those common illnesses. So it can be extraordinarily helpful to support immune function. It's also very easy to take. I'll share a couple of my favorites with you, but it comes in a powder. You can get it in a liquid. You can get it in a capsule, a chewable. That's what we use in our house. So it's so easy that there's no reason that every child shouldn't be on a probiotic during the winter months at least. Okay, the third question, what do you recommend for pregnant or lactating women for immune support? Again, I think it's essential that women are on a good prenatal vitamin, and then I encourage them to think about immune supporting foods. And you have to remember that anything that the mom takes, it can get through the milk to the baby for the most part, but things like mushrooms, using garlic and onion to cook with is great. Elderberry is very safe. And then I recommend a lot of teas, particularly for nursing women. But with pregnancy and nursing, it's unlikely you can drink enough tea to get anything, like enough of any compound that could be harmful when it comes to the immune supportive botanicals. So Echinacea is great, astragalus, chamomile, licorice, these all taste really nice. Olive leaf is another one that can be really nice for immune supporting teas. And then again, I would sing the probiotic song to these pregnant and lactating women. So if you work with children, hopefully you know this already, this is called Clark's rule, and this is used in order to convert dosing for children for medications as well as dietary supplements. So when you're dosing children, you have to think about a couple things. Can they swallow pills? How does it taste? And how much do you dose? This is how we calculate how much to dose. So you want to assume that the suggested dosing on a bottle for an immune support that's geared for an adult is assuming the adult is 150 pounds. So you want to get the ratio of the child's weight by taking the child's weight, dividing by 150, and then you multiply that by the dose recommended on the bottle, and that's how you get the recommended dose for children. So let me just give you a couple of examples. I love seeing this. This is my son, Miles, when he was 4 years old. He's now 12 years old, so he looks very different. At this time, he was 34 pounds. So I was using an immune supportive liquid, a glycerin for him, and I'll tell you more about glycerins. But the adult dose recommended was 50 drops. So in order to calculate how much to use for Miles, I took his current weight, which was 34 pounds, and divided by 150, and then multiplied that by the recommended 50 drops, and it came to 11 drops for him. This is Miles' younger brother, Spencer. So at this point, Spencer was 3 months old. He weighed 12 pounds. And I wanted to give him an immune supportive product that the adult dose was 200 milligrams. So to calculate this here, I took his 12 pounds and divided by 150 pounds, multiplied by 200 milligrams. And his proper dose for that little infant was 16 milligrams. So you can see that's a tiny, tiny amount. So you need to be conscientious of what you're using. If you took a capsule and tried to separate it out to get 16 milligrams, it's going to be pretty difficult to guess. So you want to make sure you're using formats of things that you can actually get a proper dose out of. So what if the child can't swallow pills? We get this a lot. I want to use X product, or I want to give these ingredients, but the child can't swallow pills. So how can I get this in there? So there are a lot of other ways. So capsules, tablets, and powders. A capsule can be opened, a tablet can be crushed, and powders can be scooped, right? They can be added to foods like applesauce or yogurt. You can make a lozenge. That's what I described earlier, where you mix a powder with honey, and that is called a lozenge, and that's a really nice way. I love using Manuka honey for immune support because Manuka actually has its own antimicrobial benefits too. So that is also another immune supportive benefit, and that's just honey made from bees that are visiting and pollinating Manuka plants. And if the child, like I said, is over 2.5, you can try giving capsules with that method I shared. Other great options are tinctures, which are alcohol-based extracts. a glycerate, which is an alcohol-free liquid extract, or a syrup, which is another form of extract with a liquid. Teas, solid extracts, and chewables, they're all available. And you can blend the products with something like juice or breast milk is easy for young children. We have even done popsicles. So in our house, and I'll share a fun recipe, but with elderberry, we make elderberry gummies, which the kids think are amazing. And we also make elderberry popsicles. And what we do with that is we usually use a juice base, like we might use a berry juice or even apple juice, and we add the elderberry syrup to it, and then we freeze that into a popsicle. So the kids, it's messy, but the kids love them. They can eat those elderberry popsicles. Soups and food are other great options, particularly with things like mushrooms. Probiotics are very easy to blend into food. So a lot of great options available. So this is the recipe I use for elderberry gummies. There's a couple elderberry syrups I really love, but one of them is Gaia's black elderberry syrup. So with this, you can buy like any kind of shaped silicone mold. They're actually becoming really popular now because people are making their own gummies for getting collagen in. So you can find every shape under the sun, but you would spray down or grease the molds. We use like a coconut oil spray, and then you mix together quarter cup of elderberry syrup. Then you add and whisk in powdered gelatin. Then you pour in a half a cup of hot water and stir it until it's smooth. And then add the remaining 3/4 of a cup of elderberry syrup, stir it, and then you pour it into the molds and you refrigerate it for 2 hours. It's like so easy. It's a great project to do with kids. And then the kids are eating a gummy each day rather than you having to pour a syrup onto a spoon and feed them. And my kids remind me, we never forget our supplements because they love to take them and they ask for them, like fish oil, probiotics, elderberry syrup. They ask, oh, and multivitamin, of course, they ask for those on the daily, so we very rarely forget. So let's kind of bring it back a little bit to why should we be using natural medicine with kids? Now, particularly for immune support, a lot of medications are not appropriate for children. And we've seen things that have come off the market or have been pulled behind the pharmacy counter because they've been harmful for children. And you know, I remember when I was a kid, a lot of the things that I was recommended when I was sick, like Robitussin, you know, those ingredients have all changed because they found now that there are safety issues with a lot of ingredients used in the over-the-counter cold remedies. Additionally, if you're using an adult medicine on children, the wrong dosing can have really terrible results. But herbs and natural medicines can be effective, they can be gentle. And then the other piece of me, that like Mother Nature side of me, I love it because my children become more connected with nature and they have a natural curiosity and a natural acceptance of these medicines, and you know, they enjoy interacting with it. They like to make a tea. In fact, my kids will drink a lot of different teas and they'll make them themselves now, the older children. So we use those a lot, and there is like a natural acceptance and a natural curiosity there around plants. So now let's dive in and talk a little bit about products specifically. So I mentioned the Gaia Black Elderberry Syrup. This one is a go-to. I actually just got a new shipment in this week of products from Emerson. I ordered 5 of these. We can stock them in the basement and just never be without. This is evidence-based immune support. You can use it daily. The way that we use it in our house is everyone gets 1 teaspoon per day, or the equivalent in like a gummy or popsicle or juice. And then if my kids look like they're starting to come down with something, I'll ramp up the dosing and I'll do about a tablespoon per day. It's really safe. It's about as safe as blueberries, so you kind of can't go wrong. There's no known toxic dose of anything with elderberry, so really nice option for you. I also love that they have a nighttime syrup. You can see that on the right. So you don't want to mix these up, but the nighttime formula has some sedative herbs, including grandelia, lemon balm, and California poppy. These are okay for older children on occasion. So for example, my 11-year-old had like kind of a nagging cough that keeps him up at night. And so we've been using this occasionally for him as needed, and it just helps him get a little bit better rest. A couple of my favorite probiotics are listed here. You can see the product codes below. So I mentioned research shows a daily probiotic can help decrease the incidence of missed school days as well through that school study. So this is something I think is really important for all families to have in their toolkit. Now, if you look at children's probiotics, generally you're going to see them in 2 categories. The first is kind of an infant probiotic, and those are geared to children under the age of 2. And then you'll see kids probiotics, which are really 2 and up. And then I normally transition kids into an adult probiotic when they're in their teenage years, as soon as they're more comfortable swallowing a capsule. I don't think you need to do a probiotic every single day, but I usually recommend families go through a bottle, and then if they want to wait a little while, they can and get back on it if they feel like they need to give a break, or I'll even switch brands to sometimes expose the gut to different flora, different combinations of flora. But the Therabiotic Children's Chewable and the MetaKids, they both taste great. I've not had children refuse them, and they're a really nice combination formula of probiotic microorganisms. The next category of my favorites are those that I think are just easy to incorporate into life, is what I say. So one is Megafood Kids Daily Immune. This is a powdered product. It's an acute immune support product with Echinacea, astragalus, and elderberry. It's delicious. It's a powder, so it's very easy to mix in. You can see they also have a partnership with Uncle Matt's, which is a juice company. So they have some of the orange pulp in there as well. Everything in there is organic or wildcrafted and sustainably sourced. Excuse me, a super simple, super clean, and very effective formulation. It's really easy to carry around when you're traveling. And for my kids, you know, they usually take a water bottle to school. So during the times of year where I'm worried about them, I'll just dump a scoop of this in there. And there's a couple other powders I love too, but I'll mix some of those powders. It makes their water taste good. They like it. And it's just really easy to incorporate into life, like I say. Another one of my favorites is the Vital Kids Berry Well Immune Support. Again, another one that's a powder, so really easy to incorporate. This one contains elderberry, arabinogalactans, which I mentioned earlier, astragalus, and then another herb called isatis. So this is a really nice immune support mix. Again, it's intended to be used for more of an acute immune support. I also love glycerates and tinctures. We use a lot of them at home. I use a lot in my practice. I get really great results of these herbal extracts. So this is an Echinacea product that's alcohol-free, which is a consideration for children. One, because alcohol extracts can taste terrible, and two, because they do contain some alcohol. For the most part, you're dosing such small amounts that the amount of alcohol is not a huge concern for me. But for some families, they don't want any, and this is a really nice option. So this is an Echinacea purpurea root glycerate. So glycerin, vegetable glycerin, is used to extract the active components rather than alcohol. And the dosing is 30 to 40 drops 2 to 4 times per day. And that's for about a 75-pound child. So you can adjust the dosing if you need it up or down. This I love. It's like easy to keep in my purse. It's part of our first aid kit. Really easy to dose. It tastes very nice. Glycerates are extremely sweet. So I actually dislike how sweet they are. So I'll sometimes cut it into water or tea. I'll use it to sweeten a cup of tea, for example, as another way to not have it be quite so like cloyingly sweet, because vegetable glycerin is very sweet. This is another one of my favorite recommendations, and this is Natural Factors Vitamin C Chewables. So vitamin C, you know, don't underestimate it. It's a really nice immune support product. This one contains vitamin C along with some other bioflavonoids. These are so delicious. They taste like sweet tarts. I remember in medical school, I kept them in my car and I would have them like at stoplights as a snack. They're delicious and they are a great immune boost. So I would recommend 500 to 1,000 milligrams once or twice a day for an older child, so elementary age and higher. The only thing you need to be cautious of, it's not a toxicity issue, but vitamin C can loosen the stools. So we say that you can dose as high as you want to bowel tolerance, and what will happen is loose stools. So if you notice that a child in your practice gets loose stools on vitamin C, you would just back off the dosing or separate it into smaller doses throughout the day. So for example, a child might not tolerate 1,000 milligrams at once, but they might tolerate 500 milligrams at 2 different times during the day. And you can also consider using food and things like that with it. I wanted to also share a couple of my favorite nutrient supports because although this is an immune support product, I get this question all the time. So a couple of my favorites, the Smarty Pants line is really nice, along with the Nordic berries. And those two combined are probably the ones that I use most commonly in practice. They're both gummies. They taste really nice. The Smarty Pants comes in a couple different flavors. And I think Nordic berries, they even have like gummy worms. You know, they make them very, very kid friendly. And the dosing on gummies for nutrients is not always super high, but I do find it adequate for kids. It's certainly better than getting nothing. Right? And then a couple of my other favorites for older children, the Active Health Teen by Rainbow Light, I really like. And then the Ultra Preventive Teen by Douglas is really comprehensive. That one is recommended at 6 a day. And I think that's a lot to ask a teenager to take unless they're needing like really high level of nutrient support for a specific reason. But I still like the formula. And even if kids aren't taking 6 a day, if I can get them to take 1 or 2 or 3, I'm really happy with that. I really view that supplements are exactly that. They're meant to supplement the good things they're doing in their day. And a lot of teenagers aren't doing good things in their day, but they're still supplements and not replacements. So I do want to wrap with just some helpful tips and reminders. Just other tips for immune support, washing your hands frequently, using gloves or keeping hand sanitizer in the car for use after pumping gas or shopping. Now, hand sanitizers, you don't want to use something with like a benzalkonium chloride or triclosan. That's terrible. It's terrible for our gut microbiota. But a lot of them now use things like thyme oil or oregano oil or alcohol as a sanitizer. So there's some great natural options available now. Get more sleep. Take advantage of the fact that there's more darkness and get everybody to bed a little bit earlier. That can make a big, big difference with boosting the immune support. Next is staying well hydrated. So drinking immune supporting herbal teas. You can drink them hot or cold. Add elderberry syrup to your water. In our house, oftentimes what we'll do in the winter months is we'll make a immune supporting herbal tea, and then I'll let it cool and I'll mix it half and half with some kind of juice, because we always dilute our juice anyway if the kids drink it, but I'll dilute it with an herbal tea rather than straight water. The kids don't even know it, and they're getting all that extra benefit from the plants. Also, eating a lot of garlic and vegetables and berries for antioxidant support, snacking on those elderberry gummies regularly, and then I just mentioned some of those options for healthy hand sanitizers. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Jaclyn. Well, while questions are coming in, I can kick it off with a question. I'm wondering if you have any experience with homeopathics. There's like the oxylococcunum, and there's some other products that are being out there promoted for wintertime, illness prevention and whatnot. Have you had any positive experience with those?
I've had a really positive experience with homeopathics. I didn't share any today because there's just so many to cover depending upon what exactly you're looking for. But there are some really nice kits. We actually sell some nice homeopathic kits. We have one in, pretty much everywhere, both cars, our house, everywhere that we go, because I do find them really effective, and the kids respond, even better than adults to it. So these would be like a 30C dose, and you have to learn a little bit about the homeopathics to know which to use. But the kit I have actually came with a kind of a quick dosing guide. So even a parent that is new to homeopathy could look up what's going on, like dry cough, wet cough, ear pain, left-sided, or fever, and they can find a couple of remedies that might be suitable. And I love using homeopathics, and homeopathics can also be combined with anything else that we talked about here. So I don't use them as much for a preventive, but I think they're fantastic to have for a toolkit for acute, not just immune issues, but acute issues across the board for kids.
Great. Okay, we've got a question from Lanice. She wants to know, what dose of probiotics do you recommend for elementary aged students and middle school aged kids? So we're talking about 10 billion CFUs, 25 billion. We're talking about probiotics here.
Yeah, I mean, that's a controversial question. Some would say 1 billion is enough and some say more is better. I typically dose around 10 or 20 billion per day. And remember, a lot of those are killed in the gastrointestinal tract. So some might make it to colonize alive. And we also know that another mechanism of action of probiotics is actually that the bacterial proteins have a ability to help induce immune tolerance and help to prime the immune system. So even the dead probiotics getting into the GI tract helps to tone what we call the GALT, which is the gut-associated lymphoid tissue. And that's where about 70% of our immune system lives. So dead bugs and good bugs get there. So I typically dose, 10 to 20 billion.
Okay, great. Okay, anybody else have questions? I'm wondering about garlic. Do you have experience with the fermented garlic, um, versus just like straight up culinary garlic?
So
There's
with
the aged garlic products, I guess is what I mean.
Yeah, I've not really had personally a lot of success with the fermented garlic, but I've had a ton of success with the allicin extracts. And so we carry a couple, some of them are extremely high dose per cap. And that's another one that I really love because we don't know of any safety concerns with it. So if something's going on where you really want something potent, that garlic extract, it's called alicillin or allicin is another really nice option. And it comes in a capsule formula. It has a slight odor, but not nearly as bad as you might expect because of it's been purified. And that's a nice option. I've never tried opening the capsules for those. So
Hmm.
when it comes to children, I mean, the capsules are very small, the smallest I've seen. But when it comes to kids, I think you'd have to leave the caps intact and see what you could do to get them to swallow it. Maybe wrap it in, ham like we did for our dogs or something like that.
And what about silver? These different silver formulations that I see floating around.
There are a lot of silver formulas, and there are people who really swear by them. I think silver can be really effective. I've used it topically, but I've not seen a ton of data on it. So I always, because it's controversial, it's not one of the first things that I go to or I recommend. But I have a lot of families that really find it to be incredibly effective. And I love how easy that is to dose too. I have used it. Well, I really shouldn't talk about some of the off-label ways that I've used it, but
Okay.
I have used it in, like topically in the ear and had really good success with it. So it is definitely something that can be helpful.
Hmm. And okay, so when we talk about the ear, it just made me think about the ear, nose, and throat. So what about the kids who have, the very heavy congestion, nasal sinus congestion? Any herbal remedies for that? And what about things like, the nasal washes and stuff like that?
Nasal washes are amazing if you can teach kids to do it. I think it's tough with young kids. I've actually had, we carry neti pots and like the little packets of saline salts that you can mix in. But when I'm using this with younger kids, I would say elementary school age, younger than that, I've just not had good success with it. I find better luck using a syringe actually, because you can get a little bit more pressure and it's not so awkward to try to hold the pot with a squirmy child.
Mm,
Um, so I use the saline packets, but I would just bring home like a 50 ml syringe and use the syringe and I'll have my kids do it in the shower or the bath so that if it makes a mess, it's not a big deal.
mm,
Nasal washes are huge. Now, if you can't do a nasal wash because a child's too young, the next best thing would be like a saline spray. And we also sell a saline spray that contains xylitol, and xylitol is a natural antimicrobial. So I love that nasal spray. It's super easy to dose. It doesn't sting or burn. Kids don't really seem to mind it. And that's another really nice option to lubricate and moisten the mucous membranes. And the xylitol really helps to create another kind of soothing and protective barrier. So I love that. The third thing I would say would be the use of essential oils as a steam. And this is something else that we do regularly in the wintertime. So you can do it several ways. You can do like having the child sit over a pot of hot water with a towel over their head to create a steam tent. And then you add a couple drops of essential oil, like no more than 5. And you could use a couple of my favorites would be lavender or thyme. You can add a small amount of like the eucalyptus or pine, but that's very potent to burn the eyes if there's too much. But inhaling the steam and getting the essential oils can be really helpful as well. And those are all not things that you swallow. And that's what I like that with children. I try to make it so that they're not just popping a lot of pills. There's so many other great things that you can do.
mm. How about oregano oil? There's a lot of formulations of that out there now too that, taken orally. Uh,
I've just not seen it in kids. And when it comes to children, I'm pretty conservative as far as what I'll recommend. I want to see either safety data or a very long history of use in the pediatric population. Oregano oil is an amazing immune supportive ingredient for adults, but I'm just not sure about the safety for kids. And I also, the other piece is that you have to swallow soft gel. That's another one that you really couldn't chew.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And are you a fan of ginger?
Not, I do, again, I love it. For kids, it's oftentimes hot and they won't take it. You know, I
Well,
think a little bit of ginger in a tea can be great, but if you were gonna make it so gingery that you're really getting that like invigorating effect from it, most kids that I've worked with won't tolerate it. Too hot for them. But I do love it. Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else out there have questions? Well, if there are no more questions, I guess we can all call it a night and go about enjoying the rest of our evenings. Thank you very much, Jaclyn, Chasse. Or anything else you want to add before we close off?
I don't think so. No, thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you for being here with us, and thank you, Emerson, Ecologics, and Welevate for sponsoring this series. The third episode is next Thursday, same time, 8 o'clock Eastern, and we will have Meredith Murray on the show, and she will be talking about seasonal affective disorder and this, the whole like seasonal shift that how it affects mood and sort of like mood issues. So tune in again for that. And on that note, have a great evening, and we hope we'll have you tune in next week. Thanks very much. This is Eric Goldman from Holistic Primary Care signing off.